And I'd love to introduce this panel, which will be moderated by Natalie Lung from Bloomberg. Feel free, panelists, come on up, and Natalie. We've also got Ron Thaniel, Senior Director of Policy and Regulatory Affairs at Zoox. Feel free, come on up, guys. John Miller from Nexar, Will Graylin from indiGO Tech, and Laura Kavanagh, Commissioner Emeritus at FDNY. Natalie, I'll let you give them all a proper introduction, but excited to hear from all of our panelists here.
Thank you, Harry. Let's all give a round of applause to our panelists. So I want to start off by having you introduce yourselves and talk about how your product, how your services fit into the future of mobility. So why don't we start here?
Okay, I guess I will get started with my introduction as well as indiGO Tech, Go for short, for our company. I have been a serial entrepreneur now for about 26 years. And went to MIT for graduate school and caught the entrepreneurial bug. That was after spending 6 years as a nuclear submarine officer prior to MIT. And one of the things that got me into entrepreneurship was a very simple question that my MIT professor had asked, which is, what's the difference between inventions and innovations? And lots of hands went up, and he finally gave me his simple answer, which still sticks with me today. He says, innovations are simply inventions that made it into the marketplace and got mass adoption and made an impact. There are lots of inventions, but very few innovations, because you got to cross through the shadow of valley of death and many ways to fail. You need tremendous entrepreneurship and a lot of energy to raise money, build the team, execute, build the product, etc. So that caught my attention, and I've been on that journey ever since. And my previous 4 companies have been very lucky to have gone from invention to innovation. The last one being Samsung Pay, that acquired my company and became Samsung Pay, where I served 3 years as the global co-GM. And what led me to indiGO and Go for sustainable transportation is really my passion towards seeing this electrification and autonomy journey. I may not have started as far back as some of you guys, but what I have done is combine all of my entrepreneurial journey from learnings and my engineering background to bring indiGO technology now towards seeing it not just as a technology company, which we have an absolutely stunning smart wheel technology that was invented out of MIT that you can see out there in the show space, where every wheel happens to be a robotic propulsion system and an active suspension system all in one, that allows us to truly create next generation of electric vehicles that are roomier because you got nothing in between the wheels. You got a very low flat floor to create amazing space, and you can create unbelievably smooth rides for the next generation of ride hail as well as delivery. So we see that as both an experience boost, but also as an economic boost, because once we can make that vehicle lighter, means a smaller battery. Smaller battery means much less cost and less weight, more efficient, faster to charge. So all of these things basically create a next generation vehicle, and you can see our vehicles out there with Flow Ride and the Flow Cargo. But what we realize is it takes more than just an invention out of MIT. What it takes is really solving the problems and solutions that this world needs, which is a vertically integrated supply of electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles that are based on the right platform, the right unit economics, but also how do you manage the drivers and the workforce in between to make sure that that supply of transportation that's sustainable can meet the demand up here. And that demand, whether it's Uber, whether it's Amazon, FedEx, DoorDash, you name it, and even just local demand, how do you take that demand and match it up with the supply? And we think that it's really a very powerful and necessary way for us to solve that complexity under the hood. Nobody cares how it gets done. They just wanted to flip open their phone and order, and boom, there it is, right? So we see that this transition to electric is very different than the gas. And working with autonomous companies, working with supply and demand side to make that happen, that's what indiGO is all about. So Go is focused on not only the hardware itself, but creating the infrastructure, managing the drivers, and managing the demand. So that's where we're going, and I'm excited about this panel, the discussions that we're about to have.
Yeah, let's go to Ron.
Yes, well, good morning. I'm Ron Thaniel, Senior Director for Policy and Regulatory Affairs at Zoox, and I want to say hello to LA. As of this week, LA is our next city, and we are so excited to be here. I mean, this is a home for me. I have family here in LA, so I know how special it is, but this is just an incredible opportunity. So at Zoox, what we're doing, we have put on public roads the world's only ground-up purpose-built robotaxi, designed for the rider, not the driver. We are an Amazon company. We have the patience to go the distance. That's critical with this technology. Safety is foundational with this technology. Our vehicle will provide autonomous mobility on demand in cities across this country. Right now, the robotaxi is operating in Northern California, in San Francisco and Foster City, which is where we're headquartered. We are right around the corner from our commercial launch in Las Vegas. This is truly the experience as an urbanist, as a city person. My career goes way back working for mayors and advising mayors through the U.S. Conference of Mayors and NACDO, and right out of grad school, worked for a mayor, and I had no idea what I was doing, to be honest with you, at the time. But what I did know is that cities are special places, places of culture, places that people come together, places where people use shared mobility. And that's what we're doing at Zoox. The way I look at this, at some point in the day, you're gonna get in our vehicle, our robotaxi, has no manual controls. If you get into it, it's like a stagecoach. It's about the experience. Over 100 safety innovations that you will not find in a vehicle today, including one that I'm super proud of. We have a horseshoe airbag that comes down and will protect all 4 riders in our vehicle. You're not gonna drive your personal automobile into dense urban environments. We're part of that larger urban mobility ecosystem. Public transit, bike share, scooter share, walking. And that makes me so proud to be at a company that understands, that prioritizes the relationship with cities. In most cases, I'm gonna go into more detail, the city's not our regulator. For example, here in California, it's at the state level with the DMV and California Public Utilities Commission. But we're here in cities because that's where the heart is. That's where America is at the end of the day. You think about what LA is, these communities, thriving communities. We're gonna be part of that. And so the announcement that I'm bringing to you today is we are here. The process will be long, so you're not gonna wake up tomorrow and see a robotaxi out front. I know some of you want that. But that said, we have a process that we go through because safety is foundational at this company. So in addition to the robotaxi, again, operating in Northern California and Las Vegas, we have our test fleet on the ground in Miami, Austin, Seattle, and now here. So I look forward to this conversation. I look forward to becoming a part of this community from a work standpoint. Again, my family's right over in Baldwin Hills, so I've been coming here for a long time. But again, thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to the conversation.
We'll have John.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is John Miller. I'm the VP of Enterprise Growth at Nexar. I want to start by thanking Natalie for moderating the panel, for all my colleagues here on the panel as well, and for the team at Curbivore for putting together a really fantastic event so far. A little bit about my background. I've been in the automotive and mobility industry for quite some time. Most notably, I was at Tesla for a while, I was at Lyft for a while, and I'm incredibly passionate about the industry as a whole, and for that reason, I made the move over to Nexar. And so I want to tell you a little bit about Nexar. For those that know who Nexar is, you probably think about Nexar as a dashcam company. That's what we're most commonly known for. And this is true, you're not wrong. We have about 350,000 dash cams on the road in the US at the moment, and about 100,000 of those are actually rideshare drivers, gig workers, or passenger transportation fleets. But at its core, Nexar is an AI company. And we split our business really into two different parts. The first part is the dashcam and video telematics part of our business, which I just mentioned. And then the second part is our data platform, which most are not as familiar with. So diving in first a little bit into the dashcam and video telematics part of our business, we've spent 10 years investing heavily in edge AI technology, and all of our dash cams are equipped with LTE connectivity. And these investments have allowed us to create a dash cam and video telematics solution that's really enterprise level at a consumer grade cost, which is why we've really tailored our solutions around the rideshare driver, the gig worker, the passenger transportation fleet, because those are the people that need the premium grade protection on the road. They need the evidence of an event to exonerate themselves from a false insurance claim or a report of an in-cabin passenger incident. And that is the core of our business when it comes to dash cams, is protecting that cohort of customers. Most recently, we launched a partnership with Voyager Global Mobility, VGM. I think they're here today, but we're super excited about this. VGM has 12,000 vehicles across the US in 13 cities, and they're scaling rapidly. And our partnership is focused on equipping their fleet with our devices so that they can provide a safer experience for their renters, and so that they can provide evidence to their renters when there's an accident or a claim or something of that nature. So that's the first side of the business. The data platform is, again, it's less familiar to most in the industry, and it's powered by our network of all these dash cams that are on the road. And we are processing over 100 million miles of road data per month at the edge. And what we're doing is we're deploying AI models on our devices that are able to detect and analyze from all of the data that we're processing which of this data is interesting or relevant for companies that are building autonomous vehicles, or cities that need data and insights for road infrastructure planning, whether it's edge case videos like a collision or a complicated left turn or an emergency vehicle accident. We're using AI to essentially select these events and upload them to the cloud so that we could do them in an efficient way. And we've currently built an inventory of over 60 million edge cases that are being used for training, testing, and validation across the AV and ADAS industries. Most recently, we also launched a partnership with NVIDIA, where they're leveraging Nexar's data set to train their new Cosmos platform. And in general, we're just seeing tremendous acceleration of demand, given how how much progress the AV industry is making as a whole. And so our mission from the beginning has been to make the road safer today for humans, and also make sure that the world is prepared for make sure we're prepared for mass market AV adoption by providing the right tools and data to make that happen. So that's a little bit about Nexar.
Thank you. And Laura?
Thank you, Natalie. Laura Kavanagh, good afternoon. My background, I have about 2 decades in public service, with the last few before I retired last year as FDNY commissioner, the largest fire department in the country. And the way I came to that job is I am known for taking on the hard and impossible problems of government. So if you're a mayor and you have something that's never succeeded, I'm the person you call. I don't do easy problems. And I'm very proud of the fact, as FDNY commissioner, that I took the agency from mimeographs and fax machines, which I don't know if anyone here even knows what those are anymore. Someone does, thank you. To smartphones and robotics and AI to do their frontline firefighting and EMS work. And I did that, through really understanding the structures of government, understanding the people that did the frontline work, and sort of believing that it could be possible, that government does not have to be the land of no, and it maybe can be the land of maybe. So since I retired, I have been trying to take, what I learned and some of the tactics that I used to the private sector, and I'm actually here at Herbivore with Perch Mobility, a company that agreed to do public safety first work in storing safely bikes and batteries. So I am, really on this panel, I think, to be the bridge between the public and private sector, since I've now done both, really to argue, I think, why it is in the interest of the private sector's bottom line to be a safety-first company, to really explain how I think we have a lot more in common than we have in difference, we have a lot of shared problems that we can bond together on, and also just to share some of the tactics that I used when I was in government with the private sector to understand how we can work much more collaboratively together, and that it doesn't have to be so intimidating to approach government.
Right. So now that we've learned about how varied our panelists are, and before we get into looking into the future of public and private partnership, I'd be remiss not to talk about the topic that's on everyone's minds, the tariffs this week. We have a lot of builders on our panel making hardware, custom-built vehicles, and I'm curious, could you give a few thoughts on how you're navigating this situation for the future?
So good question. Obviously, the tariffs have sent the market into serious gyrations, and we can't really help what is happening in Washington in the policies. However, what we can do is look at sourcing from a variety of locations and places to minimize the risk of single sourcing. So for indiGO, we are looking at multiple sources from not only the Asia side, we're starting to look at European side as well. But for us, when we look at how do we create a lightweight EV, when it's light, it's going to cost less because you have a smaller battery. Lighter weight is also easier to charge. We are already starting at a low price point. So when a low price point gets tacked on, and let's say another 25%, it's still a low price point, lower than any other vehicle that might be higher price point, then you add on another 25%. So starting low, the entire industry is going to get affected when it comes to tariffs, but through the right engineering design, to focus on efficiency and focus on the right cost of bill of material is something that we do very, very intentionally. And then sourcing from multiple areas is how we mitigate that risk. But starting with the right engineering product is the key.
What about Zoox?
It's a good question, and it's a timely question as well, as you point out. We are, of course, assessing the tariffs, and I agree with you. It's nothing that, at the end of the day, that we can really do to influence what's happening in Washington. That said, at Zoox, we have been very intentional. Day one, made in America. It's been a theme for this company since day one. And so we have prioritized the assembly of our vehicle right here in the United States. We have facilities in Northern California, just south of San Francisco, where we are creating lots of jobs, different levels of jobs, in which we're building this vehicle right here in the United States. We also strongly support domestic supply chain for our technology, for our components. It's a global supply chain, of course. That said, at Zoox, we do everything that we can, and this has been, from the very beginning, to be very proud to sit back and say that our vehicle is made in America. And I've worked with Congress, and I was a political appointee in the Biden White House, where we prioritize that as well. We must be able to build the future of transportation right here in the United States. So, yes, we are assessing the impacts, but at the same time, we're not importing our vehicle. And I think that's a critical distinction from other companies in this space. So, yeah.
Just adding to what Ron said, you'll see multiple vehicles that we have on display here. For the dash, we are importing from Korea, and but for the flow, that vehicle is going to be produced by our partner at Foxconn, who happens to be a strategic investor of ours in Ohio. So they've bought the Lordstown, Ohio plant, and the flow, which is coming in 2027, will be manufactured in Ohio.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I just want to share that this is a perfect example of where there is potential partnership with fire departments and public safety. The issue of vehicles in the supply chain is a huge issue and has been since COVID in the fire service. You can just Google fire apparatus to see what some of the issues are. And even though they are assembled here in the US, they are composed of thousands of specialized parts. There's absolutely no way to assemble them without relying on the supply chain, which had already suffered after COVID, and so we're already under count in the vehicles. And each piece of fire apparatus costs about $1 million a piece to produce and to purchase. So if you can imagine what a doubling of the cost of an apparatus means to a municipal government and a fire department, it's devastating. So I think this is the perfect example. You know, the fire department obviously can carry a lot of weight in its name, but it doesn't have the access or the knowledge about the supply chain and the business end of it, where there's potential partnership because we are going to be just as much, if not more, affected by these tariffs at the end of the day.
Any thoughts to add, John?
Yeah, I mean, I echo the sentiments of everyone. I think it's not reasonable not to feel a strong level of uncertainty and to acknowledge that business planning is, pretty much impossible at the moment. At Nexar, we've tried to be very intentional with not, making drastic changes to our business plans based on the news of the last hour. We're lucky to have, we've been manufacturing dash cams now for 10 years, and so we've been able to diversify our supply chain. That's not to say that we're not impacted, but our focus has been on, not making super drastic changes. One thing that I do want to mention, though, and I sort of compare it back 5 years ago to COVID, from the lens that sometimes when these things happen, it really pushes businesses to accelerate on innovations or initiatives or things that might have been, in the queue or in the works and been stalled, or to completely rethink the way that you do things. And COVID had that impact on tons of businesses. For us, we've taken the last week to really think about what does this mean for us from a business perspective. And one of the things that we've been sort of talking about for a while but not making as much progress as we'd like is international expansion. And that's for reasons completely separate from anything geopolitical. It's for reasons because there's tremendous demand and need for these types of safety solutions in other markets. And so this has actually forced us to accelerate our plans when it comes to international expansion, really zero in on what countries, what regions have the strongest need for our hardware solutions, and I think we've been opportunistic in that regard. But not to sugarcoat it, it's an incredibly difficult situation, and it's fluid.
Laura, I wanted to come back to your point about sharing of information between, public and private sector. As we see more of these custom-built vehicles on the road, from the government point of view, like what kind of data, what kind of information do you want companies to share with the public sector to keep our roads safe?
That's a great question. I think it comes in two parts. One is the data, and one is what I'd call sort of hands-on interaction with the products. From the data side, what we're really looking for is how is this going to change our workload, right? And we really try. It's hard in government, but we've enlisted a lot of the universities to help with this, to model what it does to a government so that we can pre-plan, right? So if the rise of AVs was to create, say, less car accidents, but it was to create another sort of issue with the vehicles, understanding where that ebb and that flow is, understanding how many vehicles are going to be on the road, so how traffic affects response times. These are all things that we're always trying to model. And again, we don't often have the same capacity for data and analytics that the private sector has. So to be able to work with us, not only to give us your data, but frankly to share in some of your knowledge workers who can really help us understand, how do we create a model that maybe helps us change where we do service delivery, how our emergency response is going to change, ebb and flow, change throughout where it is in a city and time of day. It's incredibly helpful to us. And I know it is nerve-wracking because there is always that worry about regulation and what will happen if I share my data. And I understand a company has to protect itself, but almost every agency that's asking is asking because at the end of the day, they have to deal with whatever it is, whether or not it's legal, whether or not it's regulated. And you will actually get better adoption if they can understand where that's going, rather than one day, for instance, in New York, you have all these terrible fires, and we didn't know it was coming. The other side is the hands-on, and I think vehicles are another good example of this. For first responders, again, it's not always when it works well, it's often when it doesn't work well. So when electric vehicles came into the picture, our firefighters started getting electrocuted when they were using the jaws of life to cut people out of vehicles because there's an electric cable in a part of the car that is not present in a gas-powered vehicle. And so, even if you rarely needed to do that, even if they had fewer accidents, the fire department always has to think about what do we do when the worst happens. And we really love to get our hands on things. And so after those incidences, a couple companies allowed us to actually come to their headquarters and bring a group of firefighters and actually just have them cut up the car, start a fire, see what happens, to really understand at the end of the day at 3 a.m. if we have to arrive to the worst of it, how can we understand how to respond? We do realize that we are there for the 1% of times things don't work, and we don't mind that as long as it's not a surprise. Like, danger is built into what we do. So I think it's another example of where collaboration, if you're open and willing, especially to the feedback, can actually, really be a boon for government and for safety.
Ron, how is Zoox, learning from, these early launch markets, working with first responders and, retrofitting your vehicles so that, they can respond easier to the new vehicle type?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I like to start by saying at Zoox, we believe we have to earn the right to put our vehicle on public roads. The industry has learned a lot from the TNC industry in the early days, New York City, 2012. Working with the city is a critical partnership that we have spent a lot of dedication, time, and I'm going to pause. And Phil Pierce, raise your hand. Okay, Phil is our city guy. Phil is your go-to on city issues. He is in LA on a regular basis right now. That demonstrates our commitment to cities. First responders. We have raised the bar on first responder engagement. We have to, because we have the world's first ground-up purpose-built vehicle on public roads. So what we do, well before the vehicle was on a public road, we engage with the elected officials at the city level, first responders, police, fire, also transit agencies, as well as the community that we plan on operating the robotaxi. We don't want you to be surprised. And from a first responder standpoint, we want you to be absolutely comfortable with this vehicle in case you have to respond to an emergency situation. That includes trainings. Good example is San Francisco last year. We had over 300 first responders go through a training over a number of days. So we have the trainings. Recognizing that first responders are busy, they don't necessarily have the time to go and sit in a classroom. We have a video. We also have safety reports. So there are multiple steps that we go through to make sure that first responders have the knowledge and the understanding of this vehicle before it operates on public roads. I'm going back to we have to earn the right. And that is something that we, from day one at Zoox, saw as part of our mission. And in most cases, as I said earlier, the city's not our regulator. At the state level, here in California, you have the DMV and PUC, Public Utilities Commission. At the federal level, it's NHTSA, with authority over the design, construction, performance of highly automated vehicles. But again, that city relationship is critical to our success. If we don't build those relationships before we operate, it increases the chances that we're going to fail. And there are companies in our space that have failed because they have not set up and prioritized those relationships. So I totally support working with cities. The other thing that I do want to mention is data sharing. We want to sit down with the city, understand the kind of data that you want. We want to make sure that you can use it in a format that works for you. We want to help you with your infrastructure needs. Remember, our vehicle's on the road nonstop. We see what's happening. We see the condition of the infrastructure. And so, for example, in San Francisco, we have provided information to the city. There's a sign there that makes absolutely no sense. And we have reached out to the city, we've notified the city, and they realized, oh, you know what, we've changed the street design. That sign's no longer needed. Or if our AI is having a hard time seeing around a particular corner, we know a human operator is not able to see. So that's another example of how we work closely with cities so that they, one, know how we can help them from an infrastructure, from a mobility standpoint, but two, build that relationship with them, which is critical to our long-term success.
Will, you do have anything to add as you expand into more markets?
No, not on the regulatory side.
Yeah.
And for me, I think we should put it in a little bit of context for what this panel is really focused on, which is the future of mobility, future of transportation. And as we step into the future, Ron and I talked right beforehand, things like autonomy is actually, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So, and I want to put it in context for everybody here in that when you think about transportation and the transportation needs that we have to fulfill, autonomy right now represents maybe less than 1% of all of the transportation miles that are being driven. And when it comes to autonomous ride hail, that's a small percentage because we still got to have that marathon to get there. Not to mention package delivery, food delivery, right? All of the transportation needs. And we know that there's going to be a migration from where we are today. E-commerce is going to continue to go up. There's no question about it. More and more people, especially young people in densely populated area, they're going to pull out their phone to order rides. So rideshare is going to continue to go up. E-commerce is going to continue to go up. In the meantime, autonomy is just in the very beginning phases of trying to catch up. And not everything is necessary and capable of being served by autonomy until you have humanoid robots that can deliver that package to the last 100 feet. So keeping all of that in perspective means that we have a tremendous need to move from where we are today to where we're going in the future. And where we're going in the future, we know it's going to be electric. We know we're going to make it more efficient with dash cams and sensors that'll make things more safe, that are going to reduce insurance costs, and vehicles that are going to be a lot easier to repair, and we have to design those from the ground up That's why when we're looking at our own vehicles, we don't want them to be painted when you're going to get into fender benders. We don't want them to be thousands of dollars of repair every time you just hit a 5 mile an hour bump. So we have to design the entire system and look forward to say, what does the future of mobility really look like? And that means serving the fleets, everything from the vehicle, the hardware, the software, the charging, parking, maintenance, repair, cleaning. All of that is the foundational layer. And then from the driver side, the driver management, how do we deal with recruiting, screening, scheduling, access to the vehicles, driver payout, or driver payment to rent that vehicle to go and do the delivery for your packages and your rides. All of that is part of it. And then demand management, in that if you can utilize all of this infrastructure below, then you have economy of scale rather than each mobility network company trying to create a vertically integrated for every location and every ODD. Right? So we see that there's a tremendous need for integrating all these parts to move ourselves towards the mobility of the future. So there's a lot of work to do, and Go is really at the heart of solving some of these problems. And we're going to work with partners like Nexar to make these things happen.
Yeah, John, can you share a little bit on how Nexar is going to use data to help work with public sector and
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, about 4 years ago, we built a product specifically for the purpose of sharing data with cities. We have a product called CityStream. And the way that it works is we're essentially detecting stop signs, speed limit signs, traffic lights, construction zones, all of the things that are going to be interesting for a city. And we have a UI, we have a portal. I think what we've struggled with as a company, and I'll just acknowledge this right off the bat, is we're 100 people. We struggle, we don't know how to engage well with cities. We don't know who to talk to. And I think that's where we've gotten stuck, but we've been trying, and we're more than willing to share this data and leverage our tools to support cities, because we know how important it is for maintaining roads, and especially when AVs come online. But that's a challenge that we've had.
Can I just reinforce that is almost always the problem? And I think it's helpful to say that because sometimes it can seem so simple that people pass over it thinking it's a more difficult technical challenge. But I would say that in every loop I was ever able to close in my public and private experience, it was all about finding not only the right person, but two willing people to sit down and have the conversation at a table. And so that is not only the norm, but it is also the exact hurdle I think we all have to help work through.
It's validating to hear.
You're welcome.
I want to take a page from Ron. Who here in the audience represents, the government side? Can you just raise your hand? So I guess as we go to lunch, look for these people, ask them how, how you can work better with them, what kind of data you need to, get your product across the road. And, any last thoughts on, what is one key thing you need to get right, as we move forward to the future and get us across the road there. We have 2 minutes, so.
This technology is cool, but at the end of the day, it's about safety. Safety is foundational. We said that at Zoox. That means everything that we do is built on safety as the foundation of the company. And that even gets to how we operate in a city. The companies that have treated this like a race are largely gone. This is a very slow process, but it's a reason for that. And as we're doing here in LA, it's a step-by-step process. Right now, this week, we started mapping. This is the whole data collection stage. That moves to autonomous driving with a human operator. That goes for an extended period of time before we even put the robotaxi on public roads. So safety is foundational. But the reason we're doing this is because we believe that this technology can help address mobility challenges in cities, from equity, I'm a product of Baltimore. I grew up in a city that if you didn't live on a transit line or your personal automobile, you were out of luck. This vehicle will be able to provide first mile, last mile connection, which will be really critical for communities that have been left out of the opportunities that we see. So when I think about what we're doing here, I know we're almost out of time. We could have talked another 30 minutes easily. This is so exciting, and we could not be more happy than to be right here in LA as our next market. We're going to build those relationships with the city, the surrounding cities in the area as well. And at the end of the day, our goal is to help LA continue to move towards a more sustainable, fairer transportation system.
Great comments. I know we're running out of time, but I know it's not just one thing. You asked for one thing, but it's not just one thing, because there's so much demand right now to move towards electric and autonomy too, but electric first, in that we need people and companies like us to expand. We're starting, of course, in Boston, but we are also moving to LA. So next quarter, we are looking at expanding to LA to create local electric transport service hubs. So local electric transport service, which spells LETS, GO is really focused on bringing all these elements to help service that demand of package delivery and ride hail, to be able to create more sustainable transport services through these Let's Go solutions. So lots of work to do, lots of work.
John?
Yeah, I mean, if I could just close, I think there's one incredibly important thing that we missed here, and it's public trust. At the end of the day, adoption of AVs is only going to happen if the public at large trust the vehicles that they're getting into and the safety systems associated with them. And if you think about why the public trusts getting in a vehicle today, right? Me, as somebody who lives in New York City, doesn't even own a car. Most of the time I'm using Lyft or Uber. I'm comfortable getting in that car because I know that the other people on the road have passed a driver's test and they have a driver's license, and the Lyft or Uber driver has passed a vehicle inspection and they've passed a background check. And I think as we get into a world where AVs are in the market at scale and we're beyond a point of having a couple of really well-established players that we know take safety incredibly seriously and we trust them, we need to have a standardized framework, or said another way, an AV driver's license, so that the public can trust that everybody is living to the same standards in order to be deployed on the road. And so I think that's where Nexar sees itself in the longer term, with so much human driving data, being able to use that as a benchmark for validation of safety is something that we're really looking towards. And I think public trust at the end of the day is something that's really important in order for us to get there.
Laura?
Yeah, I'm going to echo that and say that trust really is everything, right? When government is built to move slowly, that's not an accident. It is the way it is constructed, because you're not going to be there at 3 a.m. when your device fails, but we will be, right? And so I think learning to build trust before you're even asking for a yes is really helpful. When you can say, here's my product, just play with it and tell me what you think, and I'm not going to ask you for a yes for a while, you begin to build that relationship between two people, but you also begin to build yourself as a credible and trustworthy partner to both government and public safety. And I think the other thing to recognize, and this has come up a lot, is that because of the way government is structured, it does tend to move slowly until there is a crisis. And that can be both good and bad for the private sector, right? And I'd use e-bikes in New York City as an example of both, which is COVID created a sudden market for these devices, which is also what created a lot of cheap devices and a lot of fires. And I would say that nothing has probably been more detrimental to EVs and electrification than these bike fires, even though they're almost unrelated problems. And so it's proof that I think the private sector needs to care about public safety, because a crisis can cause you to suddenly be out of business or to give a bad name to your industry. But I'd also say crisis is how we move forward. So those e-bikes have opened a door for electrification in New York City that I have not seen in my time in city government. And it's, while it may be moving slower than we'd like, it's moving faster than it would have if we had not had the fires, because it's created this really urgent need to think about infrastructure, right? How are we actually, as a city, going to allow everything to be electrified over the next 2 decades? And we don't know the answer to that, but we can't answer it alone as a city. You know, infrastructure is one of the hardest things any of us do, and that has to be a public-private partnership. So we should recognize that that is essential for us going forward.
That's the
Yeah,
perfect.
Natalie, one more thing that I think we should emphasize in this Herbivore show is that middle layer, the importance of the drivers and how we manage to provide the right tools for the drivers, and provide the right tools for the right drivers to make their jobs easier. So going to electric, it's hard to just say, here's a key, here's an electric. And for a lot of them, they don't even have a house to plug their electric cars into. So this is why setting up the right infrastructure with charging, parking, repair, maintenance, better insurance, and screening the drivers properly, paying them fairly and paying them on time. All of these things are part of what's necessary for us to migrate into. Otherwise, you say, okay, you know, you have to go from gas to electric. Well, it's much easier for them to actually drive a gas car. How do you incentivize them to go electric? You got to provide that infrastructure, the right vehicles, and the right solutions, and make their jobs easier.
I hate to stop you all right there, but we really need to go to lunch. But please continue your conversations. Like, really important to have these conversations going on. But please put your hand together for our panelists, and we'll see.